Hello. Today I'd like to talk about giant bugs. Now, I've played a fair amount of role-playing games. I'm painting figures, so people might have guessed that. And giant insects, giant bugs are somewhat common creatures you can encounter. So, they aren't always perfectly portrayed in games, as in movies they aren't really portrayed as well as they should be. That's sort of what I want to talk about. More to the point, I want to talk about bugs attacking humans, because that's the main point of most movies and or games. So most games that I've played that have giant insects in them, one of the things that you can fight is a giant tick. Now, ticks are parasites in general. They like to latch onto something, ride around on it for a few days, feed off it as necessary. So they're going to pick something considerably larger than themselves, ticks on dogs, ticks on people. So the idea of a large tick, about the size of an armchair attacking people, which most role-playing game systems will have a picture of a guy fighting this huge tick. That's just not going to happen as often. Ticks are, like I said, parasites. They want something they can feed off of for a long time. A tick my size could feed off of me for maybe 3 or 4 minutes, and so I'm really not worth attacking. They're going to go after cattle. They're going to go after larger animals. They're going to ignore me for the most part. The one caveat to this, which is going to come up with other insects, is if there isn't a lot of food, then yeah, they're going to take the opportunity meal, which in this case is going to be something that's a shorter snack. So that goes on to a lot of animals. Your spiders. Spiders generally eat things which are maybe a quarter to their size to about their size. Tarantulas don't go after mosquitoes. They go after larger animals, larger beetles. They go after rats. They go after lizards, things that are more on par with their size. Most spiders eat once every few days, so they need a lot of nutrition in that one feeding. So they are going to go after something that they can get a lot of nutrition from. Now, again, this is not 100% true. Spiders can feed up to 3 or 4 times a day, but for the most part, they don't eat that often. That's only when they have to. And that sort of goes back to the giant tick problem is, how big of a spider would fight a person? And yes, a man-sized spider would attack a man. A spider the size of a dump truck would be looking for larger food, unless there is no larger food around. Then they would have to settle for something smaller like a man. Ants. Now, ants I like. Because ants, a lot of movies about ants, they are ant-sized ants. They are, ants attack in swarms. The idea that you have this little thing that can kill you, this little thing that can't kill you on its own, but when it gets together with its thousands and thousands of friends, can kill you, and there's really no running from them because they can go into doors, under doors, and they can get to you no matter where you go. That makes a good movie. Now, there have been a few giant ant movies. Them is probably the most famous. Them, they had, again, about human-sized, maybe twice human-sized ants. They only showed 3 at a time because, this was an older movie. They didn't have a budget for large ant props. And so you don't quite get the same effect that you would with swarms of ants. And that's why I want to step back and say that what they really should do if they want a giant ant movie is don't make them human size. Make them like cat size. That way you've got this little thing. Beginning of the movie, someone gets attacked by this cat-sized ant and they kill it. And it happens a few times around town and people are like, this is no big problem. We can kill these things easy. Until someone realizes, wait a second, ants are swarming insects. We've been lucky to only encounter one at a time at this point. And then you've got a whole new movie, and you got, ants crawling all over town, and these scenes of, up the sides of buildings and all over the place, just blanketed with these huge ants. That would be a good movie. That would be a movie I would go to see. We get into other things. There was a Sinbad movie where there was a giant bee, or possibly hornet. I couldn't tell which. That worked because it was a single bee. Bees and wasps and hornets will generally ignore things shorter than themselves or smaller than themselves, unless it somehow looks like a threat. I'm sort of curious. Ants getting into the honey store might cause a fight between ants and bees. The bees in the one giant bee that was in the Sinbad movie was that big, maybe. Again, size of a small cat, size of a small dog. So it was something that would be threatened by a human, would attack a human. Would be a lot. Its venom would be a lot deadlier than a normal bee's, just because it would have so much more of it. So it would make sense that it is a threat. Again, they only had the one, so they didn't have a whole swarm of them, which was good for the movie. Could you make a good movie with a swarm of bees? Maybe, maybe not. Or swarm of giant bees, that is, yes. There have been bee movies, just not with swarms that I've seen. Or not with giant bees that I've seen, let's say. So it would be hard to make a good giant bee movie, I think. Especially, like I said, if it gets too big, it's going to start ignoring people until... the one thing with a bee would be, it gets big enough, now it can't drink the nectar from flowers, now what it's going to eat, and it would probably turn to the produce stand and start, eating fruit. It's probably what the directors would have it do. So now it is in direct competition with humans for food. So now we're starting to get into a more believable movie with giant bees. Talked about spiders already. We have similar problems with scorpions. They sometimes appear in movies, and giant scorpions do appear in role-playing games. They will eat something, again, about their size. So yes, a man-sized scorpion would attack a man, would attack a animal. So you can do that up to a point. It's when you get into the let's have this big house-sized scorpion, we're getting down to the point of if it's really desperate for food, it will start attacking things considerably smaller than itself. Otherwise, it's going to ignore most things man-size. Now, this of course takes us to something that doesn't discriminate so much about the size of its food, and that is the praying mantis. And the praying mantis is interesting. They will attack things twice their size. They will attack things their size. They will attack tiny things. I've seen praying mantises eating little, I don't know what they were, I think someone called them a potato beetle, which I'm not sure if that was the correct name for it. But from the mantis's point of view, this thing was maybe the size of a grape. So they just sat there eating these little things off of the plant that it was sitting on. And then on the other extreme, you've got they will attack things their own size and eat them. I've seen them eat grasshoppers their own size. I've seen videos of them attacking lizards and birds even, which are almost twice their size. So mantises make great movie monsters, with a couple exceptions. The Deadly Mantis, an old Universal film. Maybe, 10-story tall mantis threatening everyone. And again, this goes to the potato beetle thing. They never really showed it attacking people because this is an old film from the 50s and they cut back on the violence. A modern remaking of this, I can just see a bunch of people in a corner, and there's this potato beetle, well, not potato beetle. People in a corner the size of potato beetles compared to the mantis, that's what I meant to say. And It's just got them cornered, and it's just picking them up one at a time and eating them. I could see someone making a modern movie like that. As I said, mantises will attack things almost twice their size, so you could have all the little 4 foot tall mantises. Problem with those, they've had movies with them. I think most mantis movies they tend to be closer to 6 feet tall just for effect. But again, you could do the 4 foot tall mantis; it would still be deadly and scary. Almost everyone they got the little serrated looking edges along their forearms or their front set of feet, if you want to call them that. And I don't think I have ever seen a mantis movie, the man-sized mantis movie, where they didn't use that as a knife and cut off someone's head. And that's where it gets stupid. We've crossed the realm from good movie into just stupid cliche that must, obligatory cliche that must be done. Along that, I want to see a good comedy mantis film where we got these man-sized mantises and the people, we're safe, we got into the shack, and the mantis goes up and starts sawing through it with his arm just to make fun of this whole cliche of they can cut off their head with one of those. Because, if you're watching mantis fight, they don't use those as weapons. They pretty much, they're good for grabbing things, and that's what they do. They sort of, don't know how to illustrate it, but assume this is like a separate part. They would grab it, pull it up to their mouth, and they bite it. Their main attack is with their bite. They don't use their arms to fight, really. I would imagine that a man-sized mantis or larger, those are somewhat rigid structures, so it would hurt a lot if you got hit by it. But the little barbs on them, whatever, might cut you a little bit, but they wouldn't be using them as weapons. They would be using them, other than to try to grab you with them. Which, that of by itself would be a scary scene in a movie. And so that's mostly what I want to talk. Another thing about mantises before I leave is, like other insects, like spiders. I skipped over this when I talked about spiders. They're usually solitary. They will attack each other. In fact, if there's not enough food for two, and that's basically when they hatch from their eggs is about the only time then they are in close proximity to each other, or when they want to mate would be the other time. And otherwise, it's up to the food source how far away they want to get from each other before they start attacking each other, because they're in competition for the food. And that's what a lot of insects, a lot of carnivorous insects act that way. So the giant spider movie, we could have giant spiders attacking in New York because there's a lot of food around. Giant spiders invading the small Midwestern town, not so much, because there's really enough food to keep one or two of them happy, and so they'd be fighting each other more than they'd be fighting us. That could actually be part of the movie, as people escape because two spiders start fighting each other. Mantises are somewhat similar. The difference is mantises won't just fight over food, as like a spider will. I mean, if there is only one, put them in a cage with one piece of food and they might fight each other. Put them in a cage with 2 pieces of food and they'll ignore each other and attack the food. And so it'll be basically a two separate fights going on. And so that's another reason why mantises could make a better movie than most giant insects, is that, again, with a large enough food source, they won't be as interested in fighting each other as other insects would. Again, spiders, yes, they will ignore each other if there is enough food. So spiders in downtown New York would have a field day without attacking each other. Mantises in downtown New York would be less likely to attack each other, just because they will actually they won't really work together, but they will ignore each other, and they'll accept that is your human to attack because I've got this one over here that I can attack. So that's all I really wanted to say. Hope you have nightmares about giant insects now, because I put the thought in your mind, and have a good day.